Well, good morning. One of the special things for me when it comes to doing this show is that I get to discuss some subjects that I'm interested in with people I really enjoy talking with. Today's show falls in that category, and it starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, one of the reasons I say I enjoy this show is because I get a chance to talk to someone like my guest this morning, John Hiller.
Thank you.
Former Detroit Tiger and a guy who has made his home in the Upper Peninsula at least part of the year. John, let's talk about that first of all. You, not the whole long story because we discussed that one time, but you came from Canada, you pitched for Detroit, you moved to Minnesota, and then you wound up in Filch.
Yes, sir.
and now you've moved to Iron Mountain.
Yeah. Well, it's just I've always done things sort of just at the spur of the moment, and lived in Duluth. I met my wife when I was playing with the Duluth Dukes, my first wife, and just all of a sudden, after so many years, I took a trip over to Iron Mountain, the Felch area, to pitch in a Labor Day tournament, and sort of fell in love with the area, the people, and came back for bird season that year, and this was 1982, and then came back for deer season, shot my first buck.
Okay.
And at the ice box, and talking with my family, my girls had horses, and talked them into moving to Felch in an old farm, and we sort of homesteaded for a couple of years. Didn't really work out maybe the way we thought about it, but went on and ended up that marriage dissolved, and I met another beautiful lady, and we moved to Hermansville. Actually, when I got a coaching job, I bought another farm,
okay.
A little smaller. Stayed there a couple of years, then we went to Iron Mountain, and I've been there ever since. So I've actually been in the area since '82.
And you've lived here about 6 months out of the year now.
Just the last 10 years.
Yeah.
The winters were getting cold. Had a little circulation problems, and decided that Arizona was a little nicer in the wintertime.
And you've gotten involved in the community, and you have one particular passion you wanted to mention.
Well, I just, last 4 years, I've just got a passion for the veterans. All veterans, everywhere I go, I'm involved a little and very slightly in Arizona. But 4 years ago, a few of us got together in Iron Mountain, decided we needed to make some money to maintain the Upper Peninsula Veterans Memorial on top of the Pine Mountain Ski Hill. And it's a beautiful place. It's a wonderful place. I bet you there isn't a better one in the country as far as a memorial to our veterans. And we started with a little golf course in Norway at Oakrest. They were very kind to let us there. We had 9 teams show up, and made a couple $1,000, and everybody was sort of pleased. We got a bit. Well, just on the last Saturday or the 22nd, we had 24 teams, 25 teams.
Nice.
Had an Alice Cooper guitar that was donated by Alice Cooper and a group of veterans in Arizona, and I've just fallen in love with these special people. We didn't know what we were doing, really.
Okay.
Veterans and their spouses and a few friends and children, and we put this thing together. A fellow named Dennis Larson was very involved and so passionate over his lifetime with the veterans, and I've just found it something else that I need to do in my life.
Okay. And for those who don't remember, let's talk about something else you did in your life, and that is to pitch for the Tigers. And you pitched your entire career with the Tigers.
Yes.
And you pitched in an era that was a little bit different. The starting pitchers had many complete games back in those days.
We did, and actually it's my very first 3 games that I started, and I only started because we had a fellow, Earl Wilson, was in the rotation. He was injured, and I was a relief pitcher, had never started, and all of a sudden Mayo Smith came to me and said, we're going to put you in a rotation. So from going to pitching 1 and 2 innings, all of a sudden, well, I pitched a complete game, shutout the first game, complete game shutout the second game, and in the third game I gave up a run in the 9th inning, and I didn't quite get a complete game. They brought in relief pitchers. Shortly after that I had a bad game, and then I was back in the bullpen because Earl got thing. But so I was pitching actually as a closer from the 7th inning on. Nowadays it's 1 inning and out.
And when you say closer, they hadn't discovered the closer back in your area yet, had they?
No, well, after I had my heart attack, I played about 4 years before I had my heart attack. I would missed a year and a half, and then Billy Martin was very instrumental in getting me back, and came back after not pitching in a year and a half, never facing a batter, and all of a sudden I'm in Chicago on the mound, and Dick Allen hit a home run off me, and pitched pretty good that day. Pitched 3 innings, didn't walk anybody, and from that day on I was a closer for the next 8 years. So, yeah.
I just want to read a few stats. You know, when you pitched for the Tigers, you pitched over 1,200 innings, 13 complete games, and you pitched a lot of relief ball, really. Left with an ERA of 2.83, which is great. Had over 1,000 strikeouts. So you knew what you were doing.
Well, I guess so. I don't know, crazy left-hander. Yeah. I grew up in the era again. Put me in. My thing was pitcher. Didn't say relief pitcher, starting pitcher,
right,
middle closer. It just said pitcher. So there was times when I might have been in relief for 4 months, and then Billy Martin might come to me and say, "John, I'm short a guy. I need somebody to start Saturday." And I'd say, "Sure, why not?" They wouldn't do it now. They wouldn't. They might not even ask them, but the players wouldn't do it. They'd say, "Well, I can't do that."
Yeah,
and I always felt we can adjust to whatever.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know.
a closer or a setup guy, or
Yeah.
a middle reliever,
Yeah,
or a
yeah.
starter. And you also had a chance to play on a World Series championship team.
I did. That was one of the thrills, of course, of my life. It was only my second year, so I still almost consider myself a rookie. And to be blessed enough to be able to play in a World Series team and to come back, St. Louis had us down 3-1. And Mickey Lolich, who won 3 games in the World Series, and hooked up against Bob Gibson, who I always thought was probably the best right-handed pitcher I ever saw, and we came out on top. So it was pretty neat to be able to do that and walk around with the World Series ring.
There you go. We'll talk some more about baseball in just a couple of minutes. Back with more on today's show after we take this 2-minute break. Guest this morning, former Detroit Tiger pitcher John Hiller. Detroit Tigers, John, what do you think?
Oh, well, I just think they're a group of young guys with a couple of veterans and playing hard, making a lot of mistakes, especially mental mistakes. And I think once Mr. Ilitch passed away, I think his family and the people who are running it just cut the payroll, maybe running it a little more like a pizza business now. I mean, I don't understand totally what's going on, but they've given away so many great players that if you go around the league, and we've had Cy Youngs given away and guys that have been exceptional, and we're going to struggle for a few years. I don't see things happening very quickly.
You know, there's this whole new theory of rebuilding, this kind of wholesale rebuilding process, which I don't buy into, for one. But, I know it's done wonders for the Cubs and Houston and some other teams. Although I look at Kansas City, they went through this, and they won the World Series in 2015. Last year they finished last in their division. So
yeah.
It doesn't seem like it's a permanent fix.
No, well, some of the smaller market, now Kansas City falls in there. When they win a World Series, and I think they had a decent year, then all of a sudden these players come up for salary, arbitration, or they're a free agent.
Right.
Small market, they can't afford them.
Right.
So they've got to start. With the Tigers, that's not the case. They've got the money.
Yeah.
So even though they're in the Midwest, they could maintain a team. I mean, they've got a big contract with a couple of players, and they could do that. So I was a little shocked that they've decided to so-called rebuild. The fans hate that word. I mean,
Right.
they want to come out and see a winner.
Well, you want to see a team that you think's got a chance
Sure,
of winning, and you want to
sure.
see some players you know.
Do. And then they sort of shocked us. I think they got up to a pretty good start.
Right.
We're playing pretty good ball, and then lately it's just. I went through a stretch in the 70s where we lost 21 in a row or 20 in a row, and it's almost you go to the ballpark saying, okay, how are we going to lose today? Where in the other sense in '68 we were going, how are we going to win today? So it's just contagious either way. So. I hope in the next few years, I'm getting older too. I want to see another World Series winner. So
I'd like to see him just do well.
Yeah.
But they're talking now about Shane Green and Boyd and Castellanos and getting rid of them at some point.
Yeah.
It's like you get rid of all your good players, and then you get these young people who may someday turn out to be major league players.
Yeah, but you can't continue to do that year after year. The fans' patience will wear out too.
Yeah, that's for sure. Let's talk about, I thought it might be fun to talk about, baseball went probably 100 years without changing, and then they started to make some changes, and some occurred during your era and some have occurred since then. One of those, of course, was the idea of the designated hitter, and that came about when you were still playing.
Mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I like to bat. I was a terrible batter. I think my my batting average is 0.86 or something like that. But I enjoyed that part of the game. I still like the National League part of the game as far as there's a little more bunting, even though there's not much bunting anymore, even in the National League. But it's just it's more of a baseball game. From my pitching standpoint, I didn't like the DH because I'm facing another real good hitter.
Right.
And usually one of the top 3 or 4 in the team is a DH. So from my standpoint, I didn't want to see another great hitter up there. But overall, I didn't like it. The changes, I don't know, I'm sort of flabbergasted. I'll pride myself in saying baseball never changes.
Right.
After the DH, baseball pretty much just stayed the same. And then they got, you can't go into second, can't hurt anybody, can't block the plate in the home plate.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just, I'm not in favor even of the reviews. I know you got to get it right, but they do things to speed up the game. They have a second clock for the pitcher who's got to throw a pitch and only can have so many visits, but you're having the reviews, and some of those reviews go 2 minutes. So I don't like some of the things that's going on.
What about this one? They're talking about, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, the possibility of taking away the calling of balls and strikes from the home plate umpire and letting a machine do that. What do you
Yeah,
think
I've heard
about
that. Just like in tennis, I guess, with the line, and maybe they will someday. Because the umpiring has been. I watched pretty much every game with the Tigers, and then late at night I've got the Major League station, and I might pick up a Coast game, and I think it's awful the way they're calling balls and strikes. Usually the plays on the field, first base, second base, they're a little more tricky because they're bang. Balls and strikes, it's right there. It's showing the line the way they've got the box now. They miss so many.
Yeah.
They just miss so many. And so maybe they'll go to that one day.
Although one analyst, and I can't remember who it was, said the pitchers and hitters may be surprised, though, because right now the umpire kind of sees that ball twisting and turning and the way it comes in. And
Yeah, they did. I think they might have mentioned that last night a little bit
the
somewhere.
machine might not catch some of those very
They might not. I think, actually from a hitter, it's the pitchers, it doesn't affect, I don't think, as much. It's a hitter. If they're calling a ball this far outside and they do it all night long, then he knows it. He can adjust to that. But it's when they do this one outside and a little one inside and there's no consistency, then you don't have a clue. And then it affects the batters more.
Definitely. Yeah. We'll talk some more about baseball in just a couple of minutes. Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take one more break. Again, we're talking with John Hiller, former Tiger pitcher. We were talking during the break a little bit about these analytics they've come up with now. They seem to analyze everything, don't
Yes,
they?
they
I
do.
swear they know what the pitcher had for breakfast and
They do.
whether he went to the bathroom before he got to the game.
Yeah, and maybe it makes it whatever they ate before that game that day, and did they go 0 for 4 or did they go 3 for 3?
And computers have made this possible because they put so much data in, and even the announcers, they bring up these numbers and and this does affect the game, though, doesn't it? The way we play the game.
Well, it affects the way they play, especially defensively. Offensively, if you watch, there's very few hitters that try and hit to the hole where there's nobody in there because they're all thinking home runs now.
Yeah.
Everybody's thinking home runs. Rarely is there a bunt. The other night there was somebody bunted into the hole. It was vacant because of the shift, and the announcers were amazed, and the whole team was jumping up and down like, wow, he did this. Well, they should be doing this almost every at-bat. And that'll quit them doing these shifts if people start hitting the other way or bunting the other way. But I guess that batter's not going to get that $100 million contract if he squeezes or bunts or got so many bunts during the year.
Yeah, it's almost like they don't want to do it. I mean,
No. I remember Kaline telling me one time, these guys do, I shouldn't say these guys because I love the game. And I don't want to be the old fart, so to speak, that's getting on the young guys. But Al told me one time when he struck out, he was embarrassed. And now it just doesn't seem to bother them. It's just they accept that as part of the way the game's played now. Swing hard, hit a home run, hit a line driver, strike out. And it's just changed so much that way.
You mentioned you watch a lot of the games that the Tiger TV broadcast team changed this year. I guess most of us didn't know about Mario and Rod's issues, but that's another story.
Yeah.
But what do you think of the new team? especially with Jack Morris and
Well,
Kirk Gibson?
I really enjoy Jack. I know Jack. Jack was a little bit of a loose cannon over the years, and he's admittedly said, "Yeah, I was a little bit of trouble." I think he does a really good job. I enjoy Kurt because he's got a different aspect of because he managed and such. But I think his Parkinson's now is starting to affect him a lot, and he's sort of changed a lot this year. And I think Jack maybe move in and do a little bit more announcing. But they got all the 84. They got Dan Petrie doing some of the analyzing, and Simo, he's doing some too. So it's good to see guys that played the game doing some more of the announcing. And I just, it's a shame that Kurt's going through these things, but I think it's starting to affect his announcing.
I want to mention a couple of things because I think I don't know if it's fate or what it is, but your life is interesting, and we've talked about this before, but it's worth repeating. Number one, you were kind of accidentally discovered, weren't you, as a pitcher?
Yes, I was.
You know, and it was, just give us a quick version of that.
Okay. Playing ball in Toronto, I think I was about 16, 17 years old, and we had never had any lights at our ballpark. And we just had to play twilight games, and then that night we turned on the lights. And there was a scout traveling from Detroit to Montreal to see a player. And he was traveling on the highway, and he saw these lights. And he said, I'd traveled for about 3.5 hours, a little tired, so decided to take a rest. Well, there might be a ball game over there. And he got there in the middle of the game and saw me strike out the side. Asked somebody, how many strikeouts he have? And the person says, well, I wasn't counting, but he struck everybody out so far. So anyway, that day I struck out 22 in 7 innings. The catcher dropped the ball on one of them. And he approached me after the game, mentioned that he was a scout with the Tigers. He was interested in talking to me. I almost was sort of flabbergasted and laughed in a way. I had no thought of ever playing pro ball. I was a frustrated hockey player. And he said, give me your number. You're too young to talk to right now, but once you turn 18 years old, I'd like to come and talk with you and your family. And forgot about it. Well, just shortly after my 18th birthday, we get a phone call, and his Cy Williams, actually his home was in Buffalo, and he said, I'd like to come up and see you and your family. Only time he saw me pitch, and signed me to a contract. Give me $400 a month. I thought I had a lot of money.
The other thing in your life that you did have the heart attack that you mentioned. You were only 27 years old.
Yeah.
You had 3 heart attacks together.
I did. Yeah.
And they thought you wouldn't come back, but you became kind of the comeback player of the year. And I think what's important to this, that really sends a strong message to people who may have heart issues, and realize that it can change.
Yeah.
If my math is right, that was about 49 years ago?
Yeah, 1971. It was January 11th, and I was having my regular breakfast, coffee and a cigarette, and had 3 heart attacks. I had tried 3 cigarettes. Back then, I think it was more important. I got a lot of mail from people that had had heart attacks, young men, and wondering if they could go on and do the things, because they were so protective back then. I spent 2 weeks in the bed. Right. And nowadays they've got you up after a day or two, and they know how to treat it better. And I got a lot of correspondence from people just saying, especially as I was coming back too, and saying, oh great, I know that if you can do that, I can do this. So that was very important to me.
We're out of time. Thanks for sharing that story though, because I think it sends a pretty powerful message.
Thank you.
We'll have some other thoughts for you in just a couple of minutes. Over the years I've preached that the world keeps changing and we must change to keep pace. What I haven't talked about is whether change is good or not so good. The truth is, I think it swings both ways, and that's definitely a matter of opinion. Change that occurs because we've improved technology or the way we can do things is generally okay for me. Change that occurs because someone decided to change the rules may not always be something I like. I would much rather use indoor plumbing than sit in an outhouse. For me, that's definitely good change. Cooking on an electric range instead of firing up a wood stove for every meal is a major improvement, especially on a hot summer day. And for certain, I prefer my HD color TV compared to the black and white models I watched in the early years. Professional sports provide examples of how they change the rules and change the game. It's not necessarily that the new rules are wrong, it's just that they are tampering with the heart and soul of the game. And sometimes that does concern me. Many years ago, basketball instituted the 3 seconds in the lane rule, so big men or women couldn't just camp under the basket. Over the years, there have been other changes to the game invented by James Naismith in 1891. Like when some coaches decided to hold the ball for extended periods, they came up with the shot clock. They also decided it would be a good idea to give 3 points for a longer shot from the field. There have been other changes, but those 3 alone have had a profound effect on the game. The question is, did it make it better? From Naismith's game that started with 13 rules, you can decide. The NFL has made major changes in the field goal and kickoff rules. They've also made other changes designed to protect the quarterback and to improve safety for other players. Safety is certainly important, but have they gone too far? And today we talked about baseball and some of the changes that have occurred in a game with a long history, not necessarily known for change. A game that some tell us was invented in 1839 by Abner Doubleday. And that story is often disputed by those who claim it goes back much further than that. As we talked earlier in this show, baseball came up with the designated hitter, the exaggerated shift, a new fascination with analytics, the instant replay, and now they're at least thinking about using technology to take away the role of the home plate umpire in calling balls and strikes and letting a machine do it. The changes may be good, but I'm concerned. For me, the game just won't be the same if I can't sit in front of my TV and occasionally rant at the umpire for calling a ball a strike or vice versa, or if a manager or player can't get so worked up for the same reason, they're tossed out of the game. Pretty hard to argue with a machine. I'll be back in a minute. That's our show for this week. I want to let you know that we won't be here next week because of a network preemption, but we'll return 2 weeks from today. And remember to keep UpperMichiganSource.com in mind for the latest news anytime and for a rebroadcast of the Ryan Report each week. Thanks to John Hiller for coming in this morning and sharing some thoughts and memories. And thank you for tuning in. Let's get together again 2 weeks from today.